So moving to inflation. We already talked a little bit about this when Matt was here. So inflation is here. I was going to put here a button. For some of you who are a little bit older than me may even remember the button. So during the Ford administration, there was a button that was called WIN, for whip inflation now, right? And so people would write into the president and tell him that they were going to do their part to control inflation, and he'd send them a little button to wear. Tasty Freeze, being a good franchisor, came up with their own button that I found as I was preparing this presentation to take a bite out of inflation. But the reality is that controlling franchisees' cost and anything you can do to leverage the power of your brand to help control those costs are going to be appreciated by your franchisees. It's going to lead to greater profitability of the system, and hopefully they'll even be willing to develop more units if those units are profitable. So we need to be looking at that right now. And does your franchise agreement allow you to leverage the system buying power to drive lower cost? You need several things in place in order to be able to drive for lower cost. First is data. You need to be able to know what your franchisees are purchasing from those suppliers. How much prime rib are they purchasing? Or, if you're Southern Steer, right? You need to be able to drive that down to be able to go to your supplier and say, this is how much we're buying from you. We need better pricing. You need system unity in purchasing. You need an agreement that says you've got to buy from those approved suppliers. Now, part of the reason we need to get a good price for them and good quality, but part of the reason we need that is so we can go and leverage the buying power to say we will be able to, this is our historical quantity that we're purchasing from you, this is our number of franchisees in the pipeline, so they're going to do the same thing, then what can you do for us on the pricing? Creativity for a win-win solution. When Joey didn't speak of it there, but one of their things they do and did with me 20 plus years ago when I first started representing them is they bring in all new suppliers in to meet with them, and part of what they say is we want to be the best customer to you as a supplier, right? And so we want you to tell us what that means and how we can help you. We're going to ask some things from you as well, but we want to know what that is for you. So maybe it's payment terms, right? Maybe that's something that's important, is that they need to get paid quickly and get paid cash and know that they're not going to have any collection issues with your brand. Whatever it is, finding those things often can help. Once you probe a little bit and find that information out, that can help you in turn be able to drive the cost down, because it's not in the interest of your interest to have your brand known for defaulting on trade payables to the suppliers, right? So to the extent you can help with that, that's a good thing. What other things have y'all found to be productive over the years in dealing with your suppliers?
For one, volume, and we had it before we have it now in this new brand. And for example, you say what else? Southern Steer, we're a meat supplier. Yet if we were in Raleigh, we would have fish, because we think fish could produce 15 to 20% more volume, because fish is on the ocean, it's easy, but you cannot go to the ocean. So it's just another example. This is a very important thing.
Thank you. What else? So the question, the point was of understanding the local needs, and for example, adding, if you're in butcher shop as Southern Steer is, to be able to add fish in this environment where you're close to the ocean. Away from the ocean. Well, right. Close enough to get it, but far enough away that it's a luxury, right? So what else?
We deal with a lot of supply stuff. So the extent that the operators can help us forecast what they're going to need, LTOs, special orders, working with us on those so we can make sure the whole supply chain is going to have all those items ready when they need them.
Right. I mean, I'm sure we have all, either in your business or in your personal life, try to go buy something today and you find out it's not there, right? I mean, we have a supply chain. When 30 years ago when I was in business school, just in time was what everybody taught us about. Well, just in time worked great until we decided to stop the clock for a couple of months. And now what we've been dealing with the last 18 months is the implications of when you stop the clock on a supply chain that is designed for just-in-time delivery, it doesn't reboot very well. And so being able to do, as he was saying, to be able to go to your supplier and forecast what your needs are or get an allotment from them, right? So in some brands, I mean, it's just you're trying to get an allotment for as much product as you can from the supplier, and just finding a way to say yes because they've got it in today. But to the extent you can work collaboratively with them, then they can help you try to get what you need. So what about your fees? As Ashley alluded to earlier, it's time to reevaluate those. You may have fixed fees in your agreement. Look at, is there ways to build in inflation protections there to be able to have them adjust over the term of your relationship. If you're signing a 10-year franchise agreement, you are locking in, historically, you are locking in that fee relationship. Now, franchisees like that it's locked in, right? So you should expect pushback from that if you're trying to change that. So you need to be judicious in that, because there are going to be pass-throughs, for example, and other things where you can't just resolve it by having more revenue because you have hard dollars that are flowing out. Technology fees are a prime example that many brands have today. So as you look at your annual update in the coming months, you need to look at how these rising costs are impacting particularly items 5 and 6 of your relationship with your fees, as well as item 19. If you're doing anything other than a gross sales disclosure, again, those costs are showing up in your financial performance representation and are going to weigh on your story. So to the extent you can help control those costs for your franchisees, it's going to help you have a better story and happier franchisees to be able to tell to prospects. And I don't know where. Oh, the third point here is right-sizing your business model. So you may not need that 3,000 square foot dining room anymore. You may have learned in the last 18 months that you really don't need that dining room, and that you can do a better job of optimizing your seat count and your table turnover and do other things to be more efficient with your real estate, which is a huge component of any franchisee's income statement. So to the extent you can right-size that real estate component, not only you're driving down the cost of the real estate itself, but every inch of real estate has carpet or tile and has tables and chairs and people waiting on those tables and chairs. So to the extent you can right-size your model, now is the time to do it, because people are going to excuse innovation, as Joey said, you're drawing outside the box has been blown up. So now is the time to reinvent of how can we make the brand even better and even a better value proposition for our franchisees. So supply shortages. We talked a little bit about supply shortages a while ago. If you don't, you ought to consider having a force majeure provision to excuse performance for both sides in the event of a pandemic and other situations like that. Many franchise agreements historically have not had such a provision. If you're dealing with the public and you're dealing with a situation where you can't operate remotely, then those kind of provisions may be appropriate, because they also prevent having to go issue waivers of operation, which many franchise brands had to do last year because they didn't have those kind of provisions. They had to go through and say, we're excusing the fact that you're not open right now because the government isn't letting you be open, versus having to do that legal paperwork. They already had you could have the mechanism in your franchise agreement.
That would be extremely valuable to anybody, any franchisor who's not an essential brand. They're not an essential brand, boy, that would be incredibly valuable.
So Jack was just saying that it would be incredible and important to have if you weren't an essential brand. Now that we know which we didn't know 18 months ago that there were such things as essential brands. We now have a broad stroke of what that might look like. Heaven forbid we were in such a crisis again. And so you want to be thinking about that in light of what we now know could be possible. So do you, again, going back to leveraging the buying power of the brand, do you have preferred product access in your supply agreement? So if you're in the chicken wing business, hostage by whatever operational issues that they have. Now, most of them are not going to agree to give it to you if you haven't paid them, so there's not going to be much that you can do there, but otherwise there needs to be a wind down in that IT agreement for the wind down of that relationship, with hopefully notice, to your point, that it doesn't just happen tomorrow, right? We want notice, and we want the opportunity to migrate that data in an orderly manner if they're not able or unwilling to comply with their terms of the agreement.